Welcome to another video from explainingcomputers.com. This time we're going to take a look at the contents of this box, which contains a ROCK Pi 4B single board computer from Radza and which has been supplied to review by my friends at AllNet. Now, the ROCK Pi 4B is a very interesting single board computer. It's got a Raspberry Pi form factor, but it's also got two USB 3 ports and it's got an M.2 slot for taking an NVMe SSD. AllNet have also supplied a range of accessories, so let's go and take a closer look. So, here we have our ROCK Pi 4B, or more specifically our ROCK Pi 4 Model B 4GB basic performance set. And to put this in context, here's a table showing all the purchase options for a ROCK Pi 4 and their prices in US dollars. And as you can see, there are two models of ROCK Pi 4 available, the 4A and the 4B, with the difference being that the Model B has got onboard Wi-Fi, Bluetooth and Power over Ethernet capabilities, while the Model A does not. Each model can also be purchased with 1, 2 or 4 GB of RAM and either standalone or as part of a kit. And if you're wondering what you get in the kit, well, let's open this thing up. Let's bring in Stanley the knife and cut through the tape on the back just down there like that. And then we can have a look inside. It's all very exciting as usual. Oh, here we are, look. This is our kit and we can see in the kit we get a power supply. There we are, there's a power supply for the board. We get a lead to go with the power supply. We get down here, this is a case. I think this is an acrylic case which we can put the board in. There's also a heatsink there, so we get quite a few things with this. And then here we've got itself, this must be the actual board. So there's also, wasn't missed them, some instructions which are stuck well into the box. We're never going to get those out, are they? There's some instructions in the box I will get out later. So anyway, let's go back to the board itself and get it out of its little box. All very nicely packaged, all of this. How easy is it to get in? Oh, I can get in, that's good, isn't it? And that's a picture of a ROCK Pi 4, and here is the actual board itself. I'm impressed with all this attention to detail so far. So let's take the board and put it down there and we can have maybe a closer look. And straight away we see this is a board with a Raspberry Pi form factor, all of its components in very familiar places as they would be on a Raspberry Pi. But I think to review this board, the first thing to do is to turn it over because so many of the exciting features are on the underside of the board. And the first thing we see here is the system on a chip, which is a Rockchip RK3399, and this contains a 64-bit hexa-core CPU with 2 ARM Cortex-A72 cores running at 1.8 GHz and 4 ARM Cortex-A53 cores running at 1.4 GHz. And then there's also an ARM Mali T860MP4 GPU. And then next to the system on a chip, we've got two chips here. These contain the memory. This is DDR4 RAM, which on this particular model of ROCK Pi 4B is 4 GB of DDR4 RAM. Now, if we look at the end of the underside of the board, things change from exciting to very exciting. We've got quite a few features here we wouldn't maybe expect to see on a Pi-sized single board computer. For a start, we've got a real-time clock battery connector. And then down here we've got a micro SD card slot. Okay, you'd probably expect to see a micro SD card slot, and this will take cards up to 128 GB. And then next to that we can connect to this board an eMMC flash module, which can also be up to 128 GB. And then in the middle of all these things, the very exciting thing is the M.2 slot, and this is for an NVMe SSD up to 2 TB. And if I bring in an NVMe SSD, here's a WD Black model, you'll see that the connector on the ROCK Pi 4B actually points out this way. So our driver would have to turn round and plug in from this end, which would work like that. But it's not ideal, is it? It's pointing out the end of the board. But do not fear, there is a solution to this, which we'll see a bit later in the video. Anyway, for now, let's flick back to the top of the board. And here you can see down here we've got the wireless chip. This gives you a Wi-Fi 802.11ac and Bluetooth 5.0. And over here we have got a 4-pin connector which can enable you to add a little hat and add-on board for power over Ethernet, although do note it can't take the same board as a Raspberry Pi. We've also got the MIPI connectors here and here, CSI and DSI connectors, a camera connector and display connector, and these will work with a Raspberry Pi camera and display. And then finally on the top of the board, you can't have missed it, 40-pin GPIO connector compatible with the Pi and also colour coded. If we look to the long edge of the board, we can see here we've got a power connector in the place we'd expect to see one on say, a Raspberry Pi, but this is not a micro USB power, this is USB-C power. And then along from that, we've got an HDMI socket. This is HDMI 2.0, supporting up to 4K at 60 frames a second. And then next to that, a 3.5mm audio jack. Finally, on the main short edge of the board, we find gigabit Ethernet, which does have that power over Ethernet support if an appropriate header board is fitted to this board. And then we've got 4 USB ports, which as you can see from the colours, 2 of these are USB 2, but 2 are USB 3. And the top USB 3 can be OTG. And to actually switch between different types of mode for that socket, it's really cool, because if we flick the board over, you will see there's a tiny little switch up here. If I go into a very, very large close-up, you'll see this is a switch which allows us to switch between host and device for that top USB 3 port. And so there we are, the Rock Pi 4B, a very well specified single board computer. Now, guess what time it is? That's right, it's accessory time. It's time to look at some of the accessories for the Rock Pi 4B. And I say some of the accessories because I've got even more over here which we'll look at a bit later. But basically what we've got here is the power supply. This will output a 5 volts, 9 volts or 12 volts. Remember, this is USB-C power supply. And to use it in a UK socket, I'll just plug it into an adapter like that. And here's our cable. This is one of these cloth-bound cables, which is a rather nice, isn't it? USB-C, which will clearly go in the end of there. That's nice and straightforward. And then here is the case, the acrylic case, which we just get inside. Well wrapped up there. Audio, lots of pieces here, but be careful not to lose all these. Lots and lots of risers, and there's the heatsink as well. You really must use a heatsink on a RK3399 based single board computer, and these will clearly be acrylic with a bit of a backing on the front and the back to protect them. And then here you can't have failed to notice these almost psychedelic packages and their lovely blue crinkly colouring. They gave me terrible trouble in the opening, filming against green and green screen, you know. Anyway, let's have a look inside here. What we've got here, I think in this one, is an eMMC module, a 16 gigabyte eMMC module, which as far as I'm aware has been pre-installed for me with Android, which we'll clearly boot up in a second. Yeah, there we are, there's our eMMC module. If I can get it out, this little box, there it is. Look, we'll put it down, just down there. And also in here we've got an eMMC adapter module, which allows us to write to that using a micro SD card slot. It's bags in bags, isn't it? It's all very exciting. Come on, come out, come out, come out. And there we are. And if we just put that down in a second next to the eMMC module, you can finally see them properly. And as you can see, if we turn this thing over, on the back of here we've got contacts, so this would click on top of this adapter, so we could actually write to this eMMC module in an SD card device. Anyway, as I said earlier, I think this has already been pre-installed with Android for me by AllNet, so I'm going to take this and install it onto our Rock Pi 4B. And it should just clip into place like that. I'm then going to take the heatsink and just remove its backing on the thermal stuff on the back, the thermal tape. This will just peel off, hopefully. If we can get in there. Come on, peel off, you swine. Oh, it's coming on, there we are. And we can now take this and fit it on the Rock Pi 4B. There we are. And if I now turn my attention to the puzzle that is the acrylic case, we'll end up with the Rock Pi 4B all ready for action. It looks rather good like that, doesn't it? And so there we are. I think it's now high time to connect this thing up to its power supply and to a monitor and to stuff like that, and to see how it performs. So, I've now got everything all connected up and running, it's all working, and we're here booting into Android, which seems to happen rather quickly. Here we are in Android, and this seems to be a nicer responsive version of Android for a TV, which is running here on the Rock Pi 4B. And this is not my first boot. I have gone in, added an account, and also set up Wi-Fi, which seems to work very well. And let's try a few things out. Let's go to a File Explorer. And you might remember I was testing out playback on different SBCs a few videos back, so I thought we'd do the same tests here. That apparently is my USB drive. This is the file we tried in the previous video. Let's open that with the Rock Media Center. That seems to be okay, and that seems to be going into Kodi by the looks of things, doesn't it? And there we are, that's playing absolutely fine. Local video playback is very good on this machine. We're back to our nice little insect friends, aren't we? Wandering around, it's always good to see them. Is there the bee there going to wander up the screen? Oh yes, there's the bee wandering up the screen, which works very well. So clearly no problems with local 1080p media playback. Let's just come out of this. I think we have to come down there and exit out of that. Takes us back to the File Explorer. Come out of that. You'll see we've got YouTube over here. Good to see that's installed by default. So we'll go into that, and if we go down to there, and we should be able to pick up from there the same file and see if we can play it streamed, having a think, and that seems to be playing pretty well as well, doesn't it? Playing from YouTube there, that's rather good. So this is a good result. Have we got stats for nerds anywhere here? We have, haven't we? Let's just do that, and that seems to be playing without any drop frames at all, so that's clearly rather good. Oh, I've stopped it, sorry about that. And let's get rid of stats for nerds and hopefully get it going again. What's going on? There we are, it's now going again. And yes, we seem to have good playback here of YouTube on the Rock Pi 4B. Oh, there we are, back to full screen. It's interesting how computers take care of things themselves these days, isn't it? I like to be in charge, but no, computers like to do things themselves. The one thing I would note, though, if we go back to the desktop here, whatever we call it in Android, is the Play Store is here, and I am logged in, but I'm having some problems getting into the Play Store. This is here updating. Okay, we'll let that happen, and that clearly didn't let me in. And Google Play Store has stopped, and we can open the app again. And I've been through this loop many times now, so clearly there's something not quite right with the Play Store here. If we try and get in, it just gets there and keeps stopping, and there we are. So Android does work. It's nice and responsive, good media playback, but there are clearly a few issues here and there that need to be sorted out. But for now, I'm going to leave those and return our attention to hardware and the M.2 slot on the Rock Pi 4B. Right, our new mission is to fit this single board computer with this WD Black NVMe SSD. And as you may recall, the M.2 slot on the board is underneath and it's pointing out this way. So we could take the drive and just fit it in there. I think it'll go in the case, it will, like that. And there we are, that would be fitted. That's not ideal, it doesn't secure down there. And we don't have to fit the drive like that, because if I just take this out, what I can show you is I've been sent this. This is the M.2 extender for the Rock Pi 4. So let's just open this up. Another little kit of parts. Oh, there we are. Opens up like that. And I think in here we've got a ribbon cable. You can see that in there. And the reason we've got a ribbon cable is because there is this little top piece which fits onto the board, or fits under the board effectively. And then this board fits on the top, and the ribbon cable goes between the two with that bit down there. And then the drive will go on top here, and all these nuts and bolts will hold it all together. And in fact, you can also use this with the case. And by the magic of filmmaking, here we are. Everything's been put together. If I flip it over, you'll see on the base there, you can see that the little board has been plugged into the M.2 slot. But the ribbon cable goes round up through to the connector on the top, and then clearly the M.2 drive is mounted up here. So that all seems to work very well. And I have clearly used parts of the case. We've still got the case piece on the bottom, and various bits of the mounting hardware was also from the case kit. So let's go and see if we can access our M.2 drive. So here we are back again, all connected up and running. And if we go to the Android desktop, sadly what I have to report to you is if we go to the File Explorer, we cannot see the NVMe SSD. And I've done various experiments. I've tried formatting the NVMe drive with different file formats on other systems and putting it back in here, and I can't access it. So that's rather sad. But fear not, we can try something else. We can try another operating system. And in the blink of a filmmaker's eye, here we are running a Debian on the RockPi 4B. And this is installed on a micro SD card, and one of the great things about the RockPi 4 is that the boot order is the micro SD card and then the eMMC flash module. So I've not had to remove the eMMC flash module to boot from micro SD card, I've just put in the micro SD card. And if I take you to this page in Chromium, this is the downloads page for images for the RockPi 4. As you can see, we've got Android, Ubuntu Server, Debian Desktop, as we're now running here, and also various third-party images becoming available. Now, to access our NVMe drive, we launch LX terminal. Come on, if I got it right, there we are. And I just do a list block command, we can see all the drives potentially here. And right down the bottom there, you can see we've got our NVMe SSD. It is working, it's connected, and there's one partition on this drive which is coming up as a NVMe 0 N1 P1. So if I do a mount command to actually mount the thing up, we can do a sudo mount, and then it's going to be what in dev NVMe 0, gotta get this right, N1 P1, and we'll put that in mount, and I've already created a mount point called M2. So if we do that and enter, that should be okay. And if I now go to the file manager, and I've cheated here, I've already put in a bookmark to NVMe drive, which just points to mount M2, and there we are. This is our drive. We're accessing our NVMe drive or NVMe SSD on this single board computer. And I've got a test directory which contains, guess what, our sample video file. So let's play that, playing from the NVMe drive, just booting up a media player, and there we are. It is running, and playback is pretty good. So we've got good 1080p playback on the RockPi 4B in Debian. Now, I would point out, having said that I can't hear this because I haven't got the HDMI audio working from this player. I can only hear the audio through the 3.5mm jack. But regardless of that, we are accessing an NVMe SSD on a Pi-sized single board computer, which I think is really cool. Now, just before I bring this video to a close, I wanted to show you a final accessory, because like all RK3399 based single board computers, the RockPi 4B does run rather hot. And although I've not done any specific temperature tests yet in software, I can tell you that if you go to the base of this board and you try to touch the heatsink when it's been on for a while, it gets very, very hot. You wouldn't want to put your finger on that when this board is operating. It does get rather warm. And you may remember that not long ago I looked at another RK3399 based single board computer on this channel, the NanoPi M4. And this overcame the issue by having this very large piece of aluminium, this very large heatsink, which could attach to the base. And guess what? The RockPi 4 can have a similar thing. And here it is. Here's our final accessory. So let's get inside here. And you know what's inside here now, don't you? It's a great big piece of metal. And oh, there we are. It's black, this one. It's been coloured black. And there's also some screws. And in fact, I think, fairly certain, this is actually thermal compound. So this thing can go on rather well, not just with tape, but with actual thermal compound. If I can get inside this bag. Oh look, lots and lots of screws and things there. We need to put things together. Mustn't lose any of those. Another one over here. And yes, this is some heatsink compound. So in theory, we can take this and we can use this. Oh yes, it's adjusted so it accommodates all the different connectors for M.2, etc. We can take this and we can put it on the base of the case. And again, by the magic of filmmaking, here we are, the whole thing has been put together. And it's now a very, very solid thing. So we've basically got the extender board at the top now and the heatsink as the base. And the ribbon cable just fits around with a micro SD card in it. You'd obviously have to take the top off to get to that card. You can, I think, just about get in to change the eMMC flash module. Wouldn't be easy, but it could be done with the heatsink fitted. And this is now a very nice little construction. I rather like this. So there's clearly all sorts of possibilities in terms of testing it can now be done in terms of temperatures and performance and all that kind of thing. But that I think we'll have to wait for another time. And so this is where we're going to leave things with the Rock Pi 4B in this video. The Rock Pi 4B has got a great hardware specification. And with the addition of some of the accessories, in particular the M.2 extender board, it builds up into a very nice small computer. This said, in common with all the other RK3399 based boards I've looked at on this channel, software support is not as good as it is for a Raspberry Pi. And therefore, right now, I think the Rock Pi 4B is best suited for SBC enthusiasts, experienced people who will be used to tinkering with a board, configuring things to get the most from the hardware. But now, that's it for another video. If you enjoyed what you see there, please press that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and I hope to talk to you again very soon.